Hello, everyone. Welcome to Jewelry Industry Voices. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you all joining from all around the world. I've been saying this good morning, good afternoon, good evening line ever since we started these webinars back in April last year. And we really are a truly global audience with listeners in every time zone today, from New Zealand to Hawaii. And today we even have panelists who are either just waking up with the early morning coffee in Los Angeles, to two people in Asia who will be ending their day after this discussion late at night in Shanghai and Hong Kong. So thank you to everybody, audience and panelists, for your time to join with us today for this important discussion about branding in the jewelry industry, brought to you by Sibjo and our Jewelry Industry Voices webinar series. We started this series, as I said, back at the start of the pandemic. And the objective really is to gather business leaders together each month for a discussion about issues that are affecting us all, and to get their perspective of industry leaders. We expect this webinar to last 1 hour, or perhaps slightly longer if the conversation is fruitful. It is being recorded and will be available to view via Sibjo's website or YouTube channel by tomorrow UK time. Thank you very much, and our thanks do go out today to our sponsor for this session today, the Platinum Guild International. So thank you very much to Hugh Daniel, the Chief Executive, and also Zhenjian Liu and all the staff at PGI for your support and collaboration. Collaboration in these challenging times are what enable us to build back better. So thank you for your work. PGI was founded in 1975 and has specialist teams dedicated to developing demand for platinum jewelry throughout the world through consumer and trade-facing programs in 4 key markets, that being China, India, Japan, and the US. So welcome today. I am one of your moderators. My name is Edward Johnson. I'm in London, where I'm afraid to say, looking out my window, it's a bit cold and grey today. I hope the weather is better wherever you are. Certainly one of our panelists has already said in Los Angeles, he was watching the sun come up over California. So I hope that the weather is good and the start of your day is going well if you're in the west part of the world. So Steve, if you'd like to move the slides on, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Steve Benson. Steve, good afternoon to you. How are you?
Very well, Ed. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. What I'll do just briefly is just to give a few technical hints, and then I think we can move on. Essentially, as Ed said, this will run for about an hour. We do encourage questions. Although what we do request over here is that you present the questions in writing. You'll find on your Zoom dashboard a Q&A option, and you can write your questions in the Q&A box. And we have left time at the end of the event to respond to them. There's also a chat box, which I see that a lot of you have been using anyway, and you're certainly free to use that. But we're more likely to see a specific question if it does appear in the Q&A box. And that, quite honestly, is all that I need to say right now. So what I'd like to do at this stage is to welcome Gaetano Cavalieri, the Sibjo president, just to say a few words of welcome, and then we can get on our way. Gaetano.
Thank you very much, Stephen and Edward. And thank you very much to all our speakers and guests. I can see the number is growing. Thanks for being with us wherever you are. I would like to remind myself that the fact that we have these esteemed speaker today, Tim, Nancy, Mike, and Paul, and all of them represent very big brands, Platinum, Forevermark, Usher, and Takori. So today we have something that is truly special, and we are trying to offering through them and with them what the branding policy could mean. In this world of disaster through this COVID pandemic, and apparently I just heard today on TV that here in Milano we are going to be red again on Monday. So red zone again, once again and once more. But the world has changed in, let's say, at least in our industry, in something that we can never forget. In other words, this unity of the industry, which has been reached before, much before the COVID, but is now going on in a very, very, very impressive way. So I want to thank each one of you, Tim, Nancy, Mike, and Paul, for your contribution to our industry, regardless the rest what is doing, but you yourself as Platinum, Forevermark, Usher, and Takori, the contribution is massive. And I want here publicly to recognize and acknowledge the importance of the four of us for yourself and what you represent. Thank you very much.
Gaetano, thank you very much for that welcome. I'm sorry to hear about the situation in Italy, and our thoughts go out to everybody that is suffering, stuck at home, or in challenging situations around the world. Let's get to the panelists today for this important discussion about branding in the jewelry industry. Tim Schlick. Now, Tim joined PGI as the Chief Operating Officer in 2015, tasked with shaping the organization's global strategy and helping its core markets unlock growth opportunities for platinum jewelry. He is a renowned business strategist and a marketing expert who's been living in Shanghai and Hong Kong for over a decade now. Throughout his career, he has advised more than 30 Fortune 500 companies on how to create growth. Tim, welcome to you and good evening. You're in Hong Kong today.
Good evening, Ed. Yes, I am. And thank you for the introduction. Very happy to be on this panel. Thank you.
Lovely to have you. Thank you for joining so late at night. Also late at night, I'd like to welcome Nancy Liu from Forevermark. Nancy was appointed CEO in 2019, having joined the brand in 2008. Prior to Forevermark, she held roles at the Boston Consulting Group, Louis Vuitton, LVMH Watches and Jewelry, L'Oreal, and McCann Erickson. Nancy has more than 20 years of experience in the consumer and luxury industry, so you are very well placed to be joining us and bringing your expertise to the panel this evening where you are, Nancy. Thank you for joining. How are you today? You'll just need to unmute. It's that saying of 2020, you're on mute.
It is a saying in 2020. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Ed. Look forward to our discussion.
Great, thank you. And you're calling in from Shanghai this evening, so thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Next to my good friend, Mike Asher. Now, internally at Royal Asher, Mike is known as the Diamond Guy. Although, of course, we all know he's really much more than that. As the 6th generation in the family business, he began his career in 1998, training at first as a diamond cutter and a polisher. Mike and his sister Lita became co-presidents of the company last year when their father Edward retired after a very fruitful 50 years in the diamond business. Mike, good afternoon to you and welcome from Amsterdam today.
Thanks a lot, Ed. Looking forward to a good discussion because we all know that branding is the added value for our industry.
Thank you. A good start, added value. And last but not least, over there on the West Coast, as the sun rises over the Pacific, Paul Tokorian. Paul leads the strategic vision for Tokori, including delivering on his personal mission of spreading positivity and joy to partners and clients. My goodness, we need that spreading of that word, Paul, don't we, at the moment? So hailing from a multi-generation legacy of jewelers, Paul joined the family business in 1997. He's revolutionized Tokori's marketing initiatives and accelerated the brand's success in the marketplace through a combination of strategic national magazine campaigns and editorial appearances. Paul has been a jewelry style expert on a variety of US television shows and networks. So now we can add jewelry industry voices to the list of famous programs you've appeared on. Good morning to you, Paul.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Honored to be part of this group today.
A quick disclaimer before we get started with the questions. Please note that none of the opinions or information offered in this webinar constitutes any legal, financial, or official advice. Sibjo provides a global perspective on the gem and jewelry industry. So please, for more precise information, we encourage you to play an active part in your local trade associations and also seek advice relevant to your location and your business. Now, today we want to discuss a few key aspects about branding. We would like to hear the brand stories and experiences from our panelists. We also want to understand what makes a great brand. And also, I think importantly to start with, why there are less of them in jewelry than other luxury sectors. We'd like to understand importantly the consumer voice, what the consumer expects from brands, and also very importantly in today's market, the values, plural, the values of jewelry and what connects best with consumers. Tim, can we turn to you first as the PGI representative and branding expert in the room? Now, we know that unlike other luxury products, most of the jewelry sold globally is not branded. Now, while we've got quite a lot of cross-branding across various different luxury categories, think fashion with watches and perfume, for example, jewelry is rarely, if ever, part of the mix. So from your perspective, why does jewelry have fewer brands and branding than other luxury products?
Well, thank you, Ed. That's a big question. And let me start by I don't have there's no single answer to that, I think. But what I've seen in the past in recent years is, yes, jewelry is predominantly still unbranded. I've seen a number from 2014, which was right about 80% of jewelry being unbranded. Now, why that's the case, I think there's a couple of reasons for it. One is that in the space, what we do have is sometimes very strong retail brands. I'm not saying that there isn't any branding, it just doesn't make its way to the product necessarily. And that's a disadvantage to many. And that's just something that I think, if I look at it from my personal brand experience and working with other categories, it's a progression that happens over time. And I think we're just in the middle of that progression. So for example, in automotive, you would think that, well, a long time ago, a couple of decades ago, you would have a car brand, you drive a Porsche, right? Or you ride a BMW. But you see that within the mix, you find that these retail brands or these master brands have created smaller brands like 911 in Porsche or like the Cayenne. You see it in luxury where you have product brands. Well, you have Hermes, but you also have the Kelly bag. And I think this is starting to happen in jewelry as well, where there's just a need of more product brands appearing, and it just hasn't happened yet as much, I feel.
So it seems that we can change the paradigm. We can use branding to really create a better advantage for ourselves as jewelers. But what, from your experience, are the key elements of successful brand building in the jewelry industry?
Well, that's what you see on this chart, which is rather much to take in, but it all comes down to relatively simple and straightforward rules of brand building, if you will. Is you want to build a brand, you need to be relevant for the consumer, you need to differentiate from your competitors, you need to be credible, what you're saying needs to be some kind of true, and it needs to be single-minded. Now, what we've seen in jewelry, that to do all of that is super hard, it's really hard, especially being differentiating and single-minded, because you want to say so many things about your brand, but there's only one thing that you can say. And I think this is what's required everywhere. But this is also what you see if you look at this, if I take a step back, that's where many jewelry brands still struggle, is alone differentiation. Is being a high-end jeweler is not enough. It's like, because there's many. So what else do you have to say about yourself? That's a tricky bit. Also, what we found is that consumer tastes are changing. So if you were relevant 10 years ago, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are still relevant now. So you constantly need to look at the consumers. What is it that makes them tick, and what is it that's still relevant for them? And then credible, of course, it's especially now that we've seen so many brands moving into sustainability space. That's quite a challenge for many, because what you say needs to be true. We are in an era where consumers cannot be easily misled anymore. So you have a very sophisticated generation of consumers. So long story short is, these are the 4 things that you need to do to build a brand in jewelry.
And you're thinking about consumer insights there, which you mentioned that brands need. Now, you do a lot of research, and you found some different or reactions from the consumer during COVID. Can you talk those through a little bit?
Right, yeah. So what we're doing, and what this is to show here, that what we're constantly trying to do is dig deeper in consumer insights and unmet needs. And from a branding perspective, we were, of course, concerned when COVID hit, that there was all this saying that, oh, no one was going to buy jewelry, and everybody will be, you know what, people have better things to do than buying jewelry. And what we did from the get-go is we launched consumer research in our markets, and we asked consumers, what is it? And what we found was very, very surprising and actually very promising. So on the one hand side is, I think what we need to be aware of is that jewelry consumers and the consumers that we asked were people who have or are intending to buy jewelry, meaning that they have more income available than other groups. So they went into the pandemic with bigger wallets, and so they fared a little better. But what we've also seen is that jewelry has jumped up among other discretionary items, because for the longest time, but I think everybody on this panel, and probably everybody attending this webinar, will have heard so many times, oh, consumers don't want to spend money on jewelry anymore. They want experiences, they want travel. And well, guess what? Experiences and travel is just not happening anymore. And surprise, surprise, what people are doing is they return to jewelry. So jewelry has never become irrelevant. And I think this is a very fascinating insight. There is a desire for people to buy jewelry, especially in these hard times. And then we looked into that and saying, well, this is almost too good to be true. Why is that the case? And what we found also was a very, very fascinating insight around that. Many people were saying, you know what, people locked at home, we will see divorce rates rising and probably ex-murderers too. But that has not been the case all over. But what we've seen with many consumers is that they are saying that they found a new appreciation of their partner, and saying that, hang on, we've been locked in together for half a year. It isn't as bad as I thought it would, and I really want to appreciate that. So that's one bit. But also, consumers feel that it's really, really important to have something that's linked to meaning and love, especially in very, very challenging times like this. And that's a good thing for jewelry. And if I might say, that's especially true for brands or jewelry brands that are very closely linked to love and meaning, just like platinum. So we were pleasantly surprised.
Well, I mean, that's really important to hear, isn't it? You know, that relationships have fueled a lot of growth. Nancy, has that been your experience with Forevermark?
Indeed. You know, last year, actually starting January, we had also been tracking consumer sentiment across our key markets in the United States, in mainland China, in Japan, and in India, and select parts of rest of world markets. And so what we saw, echoing and building on what Tim is saying, we saw there was a resurgence towards the middle year, and in particular towards Q4, almost like a mad dash for diamonds. What we also saw was the sizes weren't much larger. People were, obviously, as Tim mentioned earlier, people were traveling, so they had higher disposable income on hand. They were buying more meaningful gifts. We found in our research that people were looking for brands, trusted brands. They were looking for items that had store value. So diamonds played very well into that space. In particular, in Q4 in the United States, we saw very, very, very strong pull through of 3 to 5 carats, for example. In the Eastern markets, India, a great resurgence in the market, lots of footfall towards you know, Q4 and Diwali. This past Chinese New Year as well, in the mainland, we could see the market is up double digit. Some brands are trending plus 30, all the way up to plus 45. So really, really strong comeback in the jewelry space. Again, echoing what Tim mentioned earlier, couples, I think, came out of it thinking, wow, you know, we need to celebrate, or we need to commemorate this, you know, this difficult and in some cases beautiful journey together last year. So, you know, we've seen this almost a mad dash starting mid-year, and then in particular, really strong Q4. I also wanted to mention that, you know, in the past, historically, we've seen that, you know, in times of recession and difficult times, diamonds have taken a small impact. But having said that, we've also seen really strong comeback in throughout history. So, for example, U.S. recession, you know, the last 50 years, including in 1973, 1980, 1990, the year 2000 and 2008, right after the dip, we saw very strong comeback within the diamond sector. This is not only true of the US market, but also, for example, in 1997, when the Asian and the Japan financial crisis hit as well, we saw a dip, but then very, very strong comeback. So I think ultimately consumers are looking for items within the luxury sector where there is a store of value. Comparatively, we can see, for example, the fashion industry, quick fashion in particular, has taken a very, very strong hit throughout this pandemic.
And that's a great perspective, that jewelry is doing well right now. And we've got Pranit in the chat, you know, pointing out as well the stock markets have been doing well, which does help. I'd like to really drill down into how does branding sit in with that. Now, Forevermark is probably known as being one of the best funded brands in the history of the jewelry industry. All right. What were its goals when it first started? And has it been successful in meeting those?
When we first started back in 2008, we really started out as a consumer confidence building program. And we were effectively, Forevermark was a trust mark. And it was really to help not only our partners, but also the consumers to feel very comfortable with the diamonds that they were purchasing. And in particular, Forevermark was a trusted brand, a trusted diamond that was beautiful, rare, and responsibly sourced. This is back in the day when sustainability wasn't really kind of all of the rave. So, you know, all of the diamonds were coming through from our De Beers mines. You know, the fact that we could actually follow the journey of the diamond. Since 2008, that year we started in China. We launched in 2 cities in 72 doors, points of sale. And through that, we then expanded into Hong Kong, Japan, India, and then finally the United States, and then the rest of the world markets. So if I were to fast track to the end of last year in 2020, we are now currently available across 32 key markets around the world in close to 2,500 points of sale. Our primary, I would say, you know, you ask, are we successful today? Apart from our footprint, what we're able to assist and work with our partners on is to improve their retail premium. So at any given case in time, through the branding of the diamond and combined with the collection, the jewelry collection of our retailers, they're able to elicit a much higher retail premium than they would if it were unbranded.
And so when you talk about that, you are essentially branding the diamond, as you say, and you're working with your retail partners to brand that diamond. To what degree is the complete piece of jewelry expressive of the brand Forevermark?
I think because we are a diamond brand, although we have our own collections. By and large, the design piece coming from a Forevermark obviously is very important. It represents his personality. But because of our business model, we also are working with our partners who incorporate the Forevermark diamond within their own design collections. So the diamond today from Forevermark is expressed through multiple facets of designs across the world. For example, in India, it might be a closed setting. In the West, it might be a 4-prong, for example. So it will vary across different markets.
Thank you for that insight. Let's turn to Europe, and let's turn to Mike Asher. Now, the Asher name, Mike, preceded the development of the Royal Asher brand. So how did you use, as a business, a name that's already familiar to the public? And then how do you use that in creating something unique in your Royal Asher brand?
Thanks, Ed. Well, as you can see right here on top of me, it's been 167 years since today that the Asher name is in the market. And from a branding perspective, we already started for over a century ago when we were the first family in the world to launch a patented diamond cut. So actually the Asher brand started in 1902. And if you then realize that innovation has always been a core value to our brand. So when me and my sister and my father, and even my father's younger brother, when he was still in the company and still alive, we focused on building the brand, the Royal Asher brand, by innovation on patented diamond cuts. And until today, we focus on one thing, and that is we cut for beauty. And I think compared to a lot of diamond manufacturers, we are probably one of the only one who doesn't compromise beauty over yield. So keeping that close to the core of the value of your brand is so important. And of course, it really helps that in our industry, like Nancy, we are also available in over 30 countries in the world. We have a little less points of sale, but everywhere in the world, it is the Asher story, the heritage brand, where you find the most beautiful diamonds, is told in the same exact way. And for us in the jewelry sector, we also focus regionally on taste of consumer, and consumer insight is so important on that case, because eventually the stone we sell everywhere is the same, but the design you have to dedicate to the specific culture or region in the world. And I think that if you look at the value that we are able to bring as a brand, we also give and make sure that the retailers that sell our brand also add that premium to their sales pitch.
Can you quantify that premium, the premium for the Royal Asher brand? Is that possible to do it?
I can, if you become a retailer.
You mean working with the retailer, they get the premium from working with you? Are they able to give you feedback on how much more in percentage terms they can sell Royal Asher compared to another brand?
Well, you have to be competitive into the market. So I think that's a very important part. So when we look at the retail environment, we make sure that our diamonds are not too expensive to start with. but the added value comes in the storytelling. You know, there is a consumer walking into a store buying a diamond engagement ring, coming home, and she says, "Look at my ring," or he says, "Look at my ring." And if they buy a Royal Asscher ring, they say, "Look at my ring." And did you know that the diamond is cut by the same family that has cut the world's largest diamond ever found?
Yeah.
And it continues to grow on that story.
And that story is so important, but also unique for your brand. You might have answered it with that point there, and you touched on it, on the fact that perhaps a smaller company like Royal Asscher might have less doors than, say, a larger company like Forevermark. Now, how do you compete as a brand, as a slightly smaller business, compared to some of the large jewelry retail brands around the world? What's the essence that you find most successful in doing that?
Well, first of all, I think it is very important to focus on your own niche, your own speciality. We cut 6 different patented diamond cuts, and that is what we sell. We are not in the market to sell generic diamonds or unbranded stones. So that is something which is important. Our passion and the love for a company, the focus on building a company for the next generation, which is not so much on shareholders' value, but really on the passion for the company. So if you look at what we've done successfully, is we made sure that there is a next generation ready to take over the business. And my sister and I are extremely proud of what we are able to continue thanks to our predecessors. But that is definitely the most important part. Make sure that you focus on your own small niche. I don't need to compete with the biggest brands in the world to become a success.
And that falls exactly in line with one of the brand pillars that Tim talked about at the beginning, about casting a wide net, but being single-minded. And that includes being focused. Mike, thank you for that response. Let's turn to California and turn to Paul Tokorian. Paul, what's the core of the Tokori brand? And what did it take for you to create it?
You know, interestingly enough, I'll start with, I watched an interview with Elon Musk a few weeks back, and he talked about, they asked him the same question. He said, the most important thing that you need to do as a brand, as a company, is focus on product, design, and innovation. So we have 3 pillars, but the most important pillar is Tokori Designs, the Tokori Crescent. It's the fabric that we created back in 1998. It's unique to Tokori, protected by a trade dress. And it is a design element that is the core of who we are, that our consumers turn to. And that's where it goes back to what Tim was saying earlier of, what is your message? Our message is, we are the best craftsmen in the world that make the most beautiful designs, and a unique design that can only be found in Tokori. And then we follow it with telling, once a consumer falls in love with that, they look to find more about the brand. What is the story of the brand? What are the values that the brand holds? Are they in line with what my values and my sense of style and expression is? And that's our family's heritage. I'm not a 6th generation like Mike, I'm only the 3rd, but working on the 4th as well, telling our family heritage. And then most important, and equally important, the 3rd pillar is the fact that we have master craftsmen handcrafting designs here in California. And you know, a customer friend told me just yesterday, which is so in line with what we're speaking to, he said, you know, there are a lot of people out there that I can go to in the jewelry mart that can make a piece of jewelry as good as yours. And that's true. There are many amazing jewelers in the world, craftsmen. But the question then comes to, when you speak to a brand, is, can you take that amazing craftsman and multiply them by 50 or 100, and then get another 50 to 100 equally expert craftsmen in the design, in the diamond setting studio, master diamond setters, and then build a huge company that can consistently produce thousands upon thousands of pieces of jewelry within 2 weeks, and without doubt. That is where a brand comes into play, is the consistency of the message that takes many, many years to develop, but also the confidence that you build within your retail partners and the consumer that will always be perfect and always be the best. So it took many, many years of resources and time and commitment to build this brand.
And you mentioned the word consistency. I mean, that's crucial for any brand building as well. We've got a slide up here about the Tacori Crescent, and that is a unique part of what you've done. It was an initiative started by your father, I believe, in the late 90s. Tell us briefly, if you can, more about what it is and why it's unique for your brand.
The story, oddly, is they were trying to develop heart-shaped design on the interface, on the fabric of the foundation. And they didn't like the way that it was coming out. And my father and our head designer said, let's flip that crescent upside down and then continue it all the way around the foundation. And the second we saw it, we were blown away. It was by happenstance, right? And we knew it was something beautiful, and we immediately went to protect it so that it could protect our brand, of course. We wouldn't be here today if everyone was producing this. But then it also gave us the opportunity to have something that has never been done in jewelry before, and that is this design. And when a woman sees that and she falls in love with it, it's not just about the brand Tacori, it's about this design that speaks to her. And then, as I said earlier, what is the rest of the story of the brand that says, yeah, I want to be a part of it? And I forget, somebody mentioned about transparency. It's easy to find out whether you're telling the truth or not. I mean, it's easier today than it ever has been. And as long as you have a story that you continue to tell that's the truth and means something, that's what the story of the brand is.
You've obviously analyzed what the consumer is wanting from you, and the heart and love and that connection for your bridal collections is an important part of your brand. I'd like now to stay with you, but I'd like to segue more into asking a few questions to all of you about the consumer and what the consumer wants. We need to listen to the consumer and find out what it is that they want. What do you believe the consumer seeks from a jewelry brand? And I want to start back with you, Paul, because we've been with you talking about the Crescent. So what does the consumer want from you as a brand?
The consumer from us wants the confidence that we're going to continue to be innovative in our designs. It was spoken to earlier as well, is that it's not just, I've made this and this is what I'm going to stand by forever. We have to follow with what consumer desire is, what their intentions are, where they're heading, create designs that speak to them, and inclusive of the Crescent. So the first, again, is this company innovative in design? Are they moving forward? Do they speak to me? Then, and I go back to it again, is what are the values of the brand, and how does it align with my life? And with where we spoke to the world in COVID, is the truth is it's COVID didn't necessarily create more engagements because they were locked up. It shifted our values, and we looked and said all these distractions of experiences and travel, those weren't as fulfilling as union, community, family, love. And love is essential in a time like today, where we look in uncertain times. Certainty is life is more secure with union. And I believe that's one of the reasons why we see so many more engagements in the back half of the year. And then with the celebration of jewelry as well at the end of the year, as Nancy mentioned, and bigger jewelry, is that while we did have more expendable income, our value shifted and we wanted to celebrate our love. And we did that by buying gifts for each other, and significant gifts. So yeah. I think it's an amazing shift in the values of the entire world, all in one moment.
Tim, you had something to add.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to build on what Paul was saying. I think what we found is, and that's so true. So if you ask what a consumer wants, it's, first of all, most of the time they don't know what they want, but they know what they want to feel. And I think that's important, that you need to create something that makes them feel again. And that's where jewelry comes into play, like very little other categories. But I think that what we also need to be mindful of, there is a temptation to say, oh, we'll find that magical bullet, that silver bullet that addresses everything that consumer wants. What we found is that's not particularly true. So we did a lot of research around attitudes and needs of consumers. And we found that there's particularly, we call them tribes of consumers, and they buy jewelry for different reasons. Might be status, might be symbolism and meaning, might be for myself, might be for value. And I think that it's important to start with that unmet need first and saying, well, are there common or common unmet needs that would touch on many of these tribes? And could I address them? And I think that's just the critical step here.
Mike.
Unmute, remember? Well, I think, and the beauty of this whole panel is that when we listen to our consumers, is all the panelists here, they have one particular part in their consumers' needs, and that is authenticity. And if it's from either the design or the diamond or the brand, authenticity is something that they continue to strive for. So I think it is beautiful to see that all the different brands that you have here on the panel share all those specific same characteristics.
It's great that you highlight that authenticity is important for the diamond business, but it's also very important in today's market. You know, think social media. Nancy, you do so much research. What's your research telling you, the consumer research, about what jewelry consumers will want from brands now, but really importantly, going forward for the future?
I think, our research indicates that consumers are looking for trusted brands. They're looking for brands, as mentioned earlier, that are authentic, that are sustainable. But I think most importantly, what we're seeing is that consumers are asking for brands to talk to them in a different way. You know, and from brands' perspective, the consumers really have changed in many, many ways, in that the consumer is no longer waiting to be gifted the diamond. She's no longer asking permission to buy a piece of diamond jewelry, as she would not ask permission to buy designer clothing or designer leather goods or designer shoes, for example. So, you know, as brands, I think we need to be alert and sensitive to change the narrative in how we speak to our consumers. And I think that's also what consumers are looking for. Rather than speaking to them, it's speaking with them, and really to discover the desire behind that's driving the need for diamond jewelry. And I really think changing that narrative in empowering the woman to purchase for herself, as opposed to waiting to be gifted by someone, is a critical and massive opportunity for us as an industry.
And you've done a lot of work on that, I know, empowering women in self-purchasing area. Can you talk to that a little bit about how successful that's been in key markets for you?
We've historically, Forever Mark has been very present in the bridal segment, but really we've seen through our research in the last 3 to 5 years that many of the markets around the world, many populations have a decline in marriage, but more importantly, a postponement of marriage. So people are getting married a little later, and they are purchasing for other occasions beyond bridal. And so in research, you see that the occasions could be personal milestones, birthdays, anniversaries, etc. And these, I think, from a marketing perspective, are key opportunity areas for us to further explore that repeat purchase. And through this type of insight, we then change the type of merchandise that we create and carry. And clearly the marketing message is much more diverse in stimulating repeat purchase.
And for women's self-purchase, in Japan especially, you've been particularly successful.
Yeah. Yeah, so in Japan, we know the numbers range anywhere between 80 to 85% of diamond jewelry that is consumed in Japan is self-purchase. So they range either from the smalls all the way through to the larger pieces that are purchased by older people that are given as gifts and or heirlooms to younger people. So it's a market that, you know, it's an aging population. Women tend to work a little longer. They are not rushing into marriages quite as quickly as in other markets. So the whole self-purchase segment in Japan in particular is very, very big. But we also see trends in other markets. The repeat purchase is really coming from self-purchase.
Great. Mike, your brand's very strong in Japan. Are you experiencing that too?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to tap into that. And the beauty of, we work for over 55 years already in the Japanese market. I think we have one of the most important diamond engagement ring brands outside of Japan. But if we look at the culture of Japan, in Japan, from many generations, women were the ones in the families who took care of the finance, and that is a perfect example of how today self-purchasing is so strong, because eventually the women decide how the budget is spent. Yeah, I totally agree there with Nancy. We see exactly the same numbers.
It's good to see that. It's also good to highlight the importance of women's self-purchase. I was on a webinar this morning hosted by the RJC, Responsible Jewellery Council, about the importance of gender equality and working towards that. And not the least of that is the fact that we're on the eve of International Women's Day on Monday. And, you know, let's sort of encourage women to go out and celebrate that day by buying fantastic jewelry. Let's move on, if we can, to think a little bit about promoting the values of jewelry, the values of diamond in society, the values of platinum, gold, precious metals. Paul, can I bring you back in? And, you know, we've seen, and there's many stories and there's much evidence that society and jewelry consumption in general has changed due to COVID. We've talked about this already today. So what are brands doing to support this shift in human values, and what are you doing at Tacori?
It's so interesting that, you know, every national global crisis, as Nancy mentioned, you take a little dip in the beginning and then the shift comes back to jewelry purchasing and bridal and engagement and love. And so what we're doing again is, and as Nancy mentioned, is we're telling our story. I'm inviting somebody to join us in a conversation. This is who we are. Here's what our brand is about. We're authentic, we're real, we're West Coast. I'm a pretty lax guy. I don't take anything too seriously, but I'm serious about everything that I do is the story. And what we're doing as a brand is telling our story, but continuing to use, and we talk about platinum, the best quality, the highest quality products, the highest quality goods in our diamonds. Never, as Mike mentioned, never cutting our yield or our value just to make an extra buck, right? And so our authentic story we're telling to people is that love is essential, and to celebrate love with one another and build family and union. And that's one side of it, right? That's one side. I think with this shift in the world as it changed, half of the world is going to turn to union, family, community. The other half is, I believe, chomping at the bit, ready to be extravagant, ready to express themselves, ready to throw huge parties and celebrations of life, because we know that it's fleeting and it could end today. So let's celebrate. And I think the opportunity that we have on both sides as an industry is to offer beautiful jewelry for our customers to express themselves coming out of this global pandemic. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. Tim, you had something to add.
Yeah, I just want to build on that, and thank you. I think that's absolutely true. What we're seeing as well is that through our research that consumers, especially younger consumers like Gen Z, they have been branded as superficial, and they don't take relationships seriously. They don't want to get married and all of that. And we found that actually not to be true. What we found is the younger consumers are probably the most romantic generations ever, because they really crave something meaningful. And what we've seen in our research recently in a couple of markets is that if you ask them about jewelry, it's highly relevant, and love and relationship, it's super important to all of them. And I think that's a very important role that jewelry can play in a world where everything is instant gratification and the next relationship partner is only one swipe away. There's this desire of something substantial and something that means something. And we do feel, and that's what consumers are telling us, that the right piece of jewelry is able to capture that feeling and to be a symbol of that. And I think that's why we all feel very positive of this upcoming generation, of the value of jewelry.
Nancy, we talked earlier that Forever Mark's rooted in De Beers's consumer confidence program, which started around about the time of the millennium, and then and then Forevermark really started 2008 as a brand. Do you think nowadays, and there's been so much development in the area of sustainability, you touched on that, and it is truly important now, and I think we're all very pleased to see that. There's still a lot of work to do. But do you think jewelry brands now have to express social and environmental awareness, or is it a choice?
I think that today's, in particular, young consumers today are looking for brands that are sustainable. If I were to just have one word, and that would be sustainable across the entire pipeline. And so actually at the De Beers Group, we are working on a corporate project through to 2024, 2025 to be carbon neutral. And so this whole sustainability piece starts from our exploration all the way through to the end consumer. So if I were to focus just on the end consumer piece, you know, we're trying in every which way to reduce our carbon footprint. We also are giving back and working very closely with our communities and through beneficiation. In 2018, we've also partnered with the UN Women program to ensure there's gender equality. There are programs, micro programs that we're working on in various countries that are focused on women. Our Dementaires also have initiatives that are focused on empowering women, for example. So I think these are all the kind of hygiene factors, if you will. When you talk about sustainability, it's not just about carbon footprint. It's about how you empower the rest of the economy to move forward.
I think that's an important takeaway. Sustainability issues are now a hygiene factor for brands. Mike, can I turn to you? Your business has been a certified member of RJC for many years now. When you're speaking to consumers, to your consumers, truly how important are these topics for them? Because to really drive the industry forward in this area, we need the consumer to demand it.
You know, it is very different regional in the world. One part in the world, the consumer will specifically ask where the diamond is sourced, how are the working conditions of the workers, from mine to market. And on other regions in the world, nobody asks. And I think if you're a leader in your industry today, the sustainability aspect has to be a standard. So it is not if or what do you do. It is there, and it's in the DNA of the company. And I think being part of the RJC, for instance, or being part of so many different charity initiatives, from schooling projects together actually with De Beers and the Young Diamantaires to a children charity program in Fukushima in Japan, and anything in between. I think it's just part of the DNA of your company, and it is important to continue to strive to be and become better, but it has to be in place at any time. There's no choice about sustainability. It is one of the most important specific angles that you need to carry with you. And if we look at our consumers, we actually use it also as an added value and a selling tool. We have our all of our diamonds are certified. I saw a question coming by. Do you think the diamond brand should go hand in hand with laboratory reports? Well, for us, actually, all of our diamonds have double certification. So one is an independent laboratory, but the other one is the authenticity report, which shows that the diamond is natural and not treated, which shows our focus on ethical social responsibility. And I always tell all our retailers, use that authenticity certificate to start a discussion about the sustainability, because that is where you build more trust towards your consumer.
Thank you. We're rounding on the hour. Those of you who attend these webinars regularly know that we're always stretched to get everything done in an hour. The conversation is still flowing. It's not for me to stifle that in any way, but I'd like to get to a final thought question briefly and a quick one from all of you if you can, and then we got some time to go to some of the questions in the Q&A box. And if anybody out there has any questions, please feel free to put them into the question box on your screen. Final thought to each of you, one in turn. What is the future of diamond jewelry brands, and how will it affect jewelry retailers? Tim, you've unmuted, so I'm going to start with you.
I shouldn't have done that. What's the future of diamond jewelry? I think that, well, it's not just diamond jewelry to me. Of course, diamonds are the most visible, no pun intended, a part of it, and the most substantial maybe. But I think that it's a good example of what consumers want in the future, is that meaning and that specialty, that a special piece that speaks to everyone in an individual way. But I think what we'll see in the future, that this will be a little more individualized. So they will not be, okay, my diamond needs to tick the 4C boxes and it needs to be amazing, that's it. What we'll see is that everybody has a different add to this. I want my diamond jewelry to also do this for me, to be sustainable, to be ultra valuable, or to carry an extra meaning.
That's great. Thanks, Tim. Mike, if we could turn to you next. If I can ask you to be brief, then we can get to some Q&A.
Well, I think the future of the jewelry industry will have a great part of diamond jewelry, branded diamond jewelry. As you can imagine, that the added value that we bring towards the retailers, and it's only 20% at this stage. How much more value can we offer the retailers as of this date, if there's so much more market share to get? And as Nancy said, we make sure as branded diamond jewelry that retailers get their premiums and are not competing for a commodity trade.
Nancy, same question to you about the future of diamond jewelry brands, but also how it will affect jewelry retailers. And I'm thinking all of the partners that you have at Forevermore.
I think we saw in 2020, many of our retailers learned that omni-channel was absolutely critical in sustaining and growing their business. And so we saw many of our retailers last year literally work on their back end, fixing the plumbing, so to speak, and improve and beefing up their whole omni-channel platform and their e-commerce. In the recent January MasterCard data, we could see that e-commerce grew by over 40% just in January alone. This is post-Christmas. So I think, the future of diamond jewelry retailing probably has changed much more into the omni-channel space than ever before. We know that critically, the larger, more valuable pieces continue to be purchased in store, but the omni-channel experience in reaching out, engaging a much wider audience, doing your, online book an appointment, bring them into your stores to have that final sales transaction will be a norm going forward. It's a way to continually engage your consumers that's on the go, in particular customers that you want to re-engage for that repeat purchase. We also saw that through the omni-channel experience, there were new routes to market, what we call curbside pickup, because there were jewelers who had their VIP list, they had a very good rapport, they were selling literally online, and the pickup was done outside of the store. So, the whole omni-channel CRM engagement, how do you deploy and use that tool to recruit, re-engage, and bring them into your store for that final purchase? So I think omni-channel is going to be a much more important and critical part of jewelry retailing in the future.
Thanks. Paul, to you for the last question, briefly if you can.
Of course. I think brands deliver a premium to retail stores. And in the world today with fewer people walking in, and the future is if we team up together and work together with an authentic brand that delivers a win-win for not only the brand, but for the consumer and for the retail partner, there's nothing but tremendous opportunity for the future, right? So telling our real stories, partnering together, and the future is tremendous for everyone. So that's our goal, is to continue to deliver a premium value to our retailers and our consumers, and work with our partners to be successful for many, many years to come.
Thank you. Now, we've turned the corner on the hour, so we're not going to hit the goal that we have every month, excuse me, to get it done within an hour. If people do need to leave, we thank you very much for your time to be with us. But there are some really good questions that I wanted to fit into the ones that I asked you in the Q&A box. I want to start with one here from Steve Feldman. He asks, how will you brand in anticipation of disposable income being once again spent on travel and other competitor purchases to jewelry? A great question, because it touches on the fact that we've all spoken about the fact that the jewelry industry has an opportunity now due to lack of travel, but that will change. People will be able to travel again. Tim, can I turn to you first for this?
Well, yes, I think that it's a great opportunity, because yes, once people travel again, we'll see discretionary spending going there. So to us, it's important that to invest in marketing communications, number one, because you will never be able to get more attention better and probably more inexpensively than now, when you don't have to compete with experience on a marketing budget. But also what we feel it's very important is, what many parts of the industries are still doing is what we call catch and release. Somebody happens to wander into a retail store and then they buy or buy not something. And I think this is the time to capture data, to make sure that you recruit your future customer, and do that now. Engage with the customer now and get data now that enables you to speak to them once they can travel again. I think that's critical.
Thinking about technology, there's a great question here from Megan Crabtree. How has your experience been as a brand handling virtual appointments, whether it be selling directly to the consumer or meetings with your retail partners? Can I turn to the biggest player in the room, Nancy? Have you been able to engage with live streaming with your consumers at all?
Yes, social commerce is huge in Asia, right? In particular, China. So, we've seen a lot of our retailers literally streaming from their stores. So it's, some things you think, oh my God, but it's been super engaging. And most importantly, through the social streaming, what you're actually capturing are the eyeballs of your future consumer. So, the whole social commerce piece, I think, is also a really incredible, explosive field that's going to come on in the Western world, because today, as we know, the WhatsApp and the Pinterest are relatively separate, and so there will come a time where this will all kind of melt and come into one place. So as you see an item on Pinterest, as we know today, you click in and then you're directly into the site. So the social commerce piece has really exploded.
Thank you, Mike. I think I'd like to put this one to you, if I can, slightly on the spot, but Michael Vardy asks, what's your take on co-branding? Meaning two similar or smaller brands uniting together. Michael says there's been a lot of collaborations born during COVID. And do you see co-branding opportunities in the jewelry business?
Absolutely. Really depends on who you're co-branding with. If you have two brands which bring out the best of each other, then absolutely it is something that could be successful to bring a new product to market. But you always have to stay focused on what is the essence of your own brand. Does it add value to my future proposition? And does it fit in my long-term strategy? It's nice to do a co-branding because it seems good at the right time, or it seems like a good idea at the time. But we are in here for the longer generations, and all of us are. So I think co-branding is absolutely great, definitely also in jewelry. As you might know, we've done quite some different co-branding with our diamonds, but still, the core of the brand is still there. So no, there's definitely a future for it.
Thanks. Paul, you had something to add.
It was to a prior question, but I think co-branding is an interesting point is that imagine, I think one of the challenges that we face as an industry, other than a few of the institutions that are in our industry, is that we have smaller stores or stores that are brands within their markets and brands that don't have the same resources as institutions in other industries. So if we were to pool together and co-brand with our retail partners and take all of those resources together, there's a greater opportunity to tell a jewelry story for all of the brands in our markets.
Thank you. It's 6 minutes past, but there's a great question here from my former colleague, Craig Danforth, which I'd like to put to all of you. Craig, it's really a follow-up from Craig's question on the previous one about travel. How many of the brands here would look to merge their retail outreach with the upcoming share of wallet when people begin traveling again? He mentions, selling through cruise ships, duty-free, etc. And this is, it's a cross question with the co-branding as well. Paul, since you just spoke and you're unmuted, could you speak to that?
Yes, I think it's interesting we brought up travel. I think I mentioned earlier, I believe that there's a shift in the world, that there's a large population that are not going to go back to their old life, and they have shifted to smaller union community. So we have an opportunity in our industry to focus on that market. But at the same time, the ones that will be going out and traveling again have had a taste of jewelry, a better taste of jewelry in the last year. And why wouldn't we be able to be part of that travel experience? Because they want to show their style, they want to show who they are, and they want to express themselves. So I think on the cruise ships is opportunities, but even our retail stores, the stores across the country have an opportunity to be part of that fashion sense and style for the consumers that are going to go back to traveling all over the world. So there's double opportunity here.
Mike.
Well, Paul, you just hit the nail right on the head. If you look at Amsterdam as being the diamond city of the world, you all know the most beautiful marketing myth that is out there in our industry. But it's part of the travel, right? So we have some major diamond brands in the city who are part of that traveling experience. And if we look at our own brand, we have, like Nancy, we are represented in over 30 countries in the world. So when people start traveling again, it's also good for the brand awareness, where, like Tim said, you have to invest in right now even more because the marketing opportunities are less expensive. How wonderful is it that wherever you travel in the world, you get that same feeling of the brand that you've experienced during a lockdown. So I think it goes hand in hand. You need to be able to be part of the travel experience, and you need to focus on your current market and how to create the unique experience for your client.
Thanks, Mike. Unless there's anything else to add from anybody else, it is 10 minutes past. Gaetano, can I ask you to say a few closing words today?
Thank you very much, Ed. And I want to thank the panelists because, branding is not a simple marketing policy, or is something that is engineered, like this. Is an expression of lifestyle. And for somebody like me living in Milano, when I can go out, or just last week, I went to have a coffee in the city center, meaning the Quadrant. I arrived in Via Monte Napoleone in Milano, where everything is brand, including the street itself is a brand. And you can see cars parked, and those cars are Ferrari, Lamborghini, Jaguar, last model. And I was in one of the main fashion shop. In the window, an Alfa Romeo Spider, 1930, 6-cylinder, fantastic car. But you can see around Van Cleef & Arpels, Cartier, Even the bar, when you go to have a coffee, you get a coffee because the brand. Now, we are talking here about diamonds, about platinum, about Ashakat, about Takori, which is a very well-known brand. And, I was just thinking, when you want a diamond, and just to quote the famous De Beers sentence, a diamond is forever. Yes, of course, a diamond is forever. But if you want something special, you want a diamond, maybe, or most probably forever mark, if not Ashakat. You want mounted it in a platinum ring or pendant or bracelet. As Paul was saying, when I saw the models, which I know since a long time, is the joy for the spirit. Branding is the satisfaction of what we want, we the consumer. Branding is a satisfaction of our dreams and our sensation. I don't want to repeat things that we all know, but still is emotioning to have a very nice piece branded of jewelry. And Paul was saying, I have seen many pieces of jewelry and not necessarily unbranded, but still very well done. Well, today, our generations and young generation, Z generation, millennials are changed, and they are much more sophisticated than what at least I, at my age, was. My family is in the business in 200 years this year. So I will make a challenge with your father, Mike, with Edwards. I would say, even though you are younger, still you look older than me. But apart that, apart a joke like this, but yes, we live in a wonderful world. And even the COVID has given us a new opportunity to grow, to flourish, and to let the people, despite the COVID, be happy with something little of our contribution as an industry.
Yeah.
So I want to applaud all of you, and I want to thank you and all the incredible number of attendees and the incredible importance of our attendees. Thank you very much.
Catchup, thanks for those closing words. Now, I'm sure that Nancy in Shanghai and Tim in Hong Kong are getting their pajamas on as I speak, ready for bed. So thank you very much to everybody for participating today, but mainly I'd like to thank Platinum Guild International, PGI, as one of our season sponsors for these discussions, also to the Natural Diamond Council and to GemCloud for supporting us throughout. We will be back next month in April. You'll receive information about that if you're on Sibjo email list. If you're not on that email list, why not? Please send us an email and we'll add your name onto it, or follow us on social media. I'd like to end by recognizing, and we mentioned it earlier, that Monday, March 8th is International Women's Day. And the theme this year is choose to challenge. A challenged world is an alert world, and from challenge comes change. I want to ask this audience today to please recognize this day and this call to action in whatever way you can. There are many industry events and webinars focused on gender equality and all issues around International Women's Day. So, and one of them, for example, is by the Natural Diamond Council that have an event on Monday. So I'd like you all to please join if you have time, and all as members of the industry to play a part in changing the gender dynamic in our trade and working towards being part of Sustainable Development Goal 5, gender equality. Thank you to my panelists, Nancy and Tim. I see you're getting into your pajamas and getting your teddy bears ready. So thank you for staying up late. Mike from Amsterdam, and we wish you all the very best to you and the family. And last but not least, Paul, have a great day, Californian day over there on that side of the world. We'll end with a commercial here, which I think speaks to the idea of values and women's self-purchase in the Japan market. It's a PGI video, so we hope you enjoy it as we end. And for those of you that like reading through the chat, we'll leave the chat up for a few minutes afterwards so you can go back and read through it. There's been lots of interesting discussion there. Stay safe, and we'll see you next month. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
本当の私。私らしさを決めるのは私自身。仕事は常に全力な自分。時には落ち込んで、時には立ち止まる自分。それでも前を向き、自分らしく生きることを諦めないのも、全部嘘がなく、自然体な自分だと思っている。失敗があったからこそ、成長して強くなれたり、落ち込むこともあるけれど、なりたい自分に向かって、私は前に進む。誰しもがそんな瞬間を積み重ねながら輝く未来を願っている。夢に向かって続いていく日々、一歩ずつ一歩ずつまっすぐ歩いていく。私らしい幸せの形を見つけるために。不安なことも心細い時もあるけれど、凛として前を向いて笑っていたい。そんな私に力をくれるのはプラチナのまっすぐな輝き。本当の私、輝くプラチナウーマン。